Some people would say it's a special day. For me, it's a day, but this is my Earth Day. How old are you? What's your age? I'm 42 today, whatever that means. Time doesn't mean what you think it means. This time thing is a deception. It's a delusion. And the aging process isn't what you think it is. It doesn't have to be what you have been convinced that it has to be. This whole thing can be totally different in terms of the speed with which you start to really go through the symptoms of aging and this whole kind of process. But that's something I'll talk more about that in the next 20 years, where the people will believe what I have to say then. Now they'll be like, oh, well, you're still young. Like, okay, yeah, I'll come back 20 years. We'll have that conversation. At that point, what I want you to do first is give your definition or your concept of the idea of plugging in and the importance of that for folks who might aspire to practice a mucusless diet or to try to survive this apocalypse that we're heading toward. Plugging in
for me was reading the book and being just so enamored with the book that I wanted to know what Eric knew. So plugging in, that's where it started for me. Was the more I read the book, what I decided to do was mimic him in terms of experimenting on yourself. So I said, well, that's how I can, know the man. I can experiment on myself like he did. That was my plugging in. Community thing wasn't there like that. We had to do a lot of self-motivating ourselves. We only had one other person, who was doing it. At that time, it was kind of like every man for himself. And then later on, it was years that went by that it wasn't really a plug-in, like, socializing on that level with each other. Came, like me and Vic's thing really came tighter in the 90s. We talked and I would go to the rehearsals and things, but I just wasn't around. But I was doing it. I was doing this, but I wasn't around. But when I was around, then that's when the plug-in started. For me, is the plug-in. You gotta want to do this. That's the first thing. You gotta want to do it and see if it is what it is. You gotta give it some time. You gotta give it 5, 6, 7 years just to see if it is what it is. By the time Mucus-Free came about, it was like a community, but it was kind of just like me and Spira, and the other people who was into it wasn't with us like that. You know what I mean? It all had to come back together. Everybody was searching for things on their own. Not that there wasn't any contact or anything. It just was everybody was kind of figuring out this little sanction of people. Like me and Spira were over here. You had Philippe and his family. They were over there. You had the core. He was over. You had Vic. He was. It was kind of a different thing. And then I think what happened was we just really got serious about the community and started just gathering with the Breatharian Ensemble, naming the band that, and creating activities, study periods. The plug-in, that was all a part of the plug-in. Then it got more families and more people. We had some of the bandmates, and it just started to pick up, man. Like that, as far as just a lot more people. We could have a group of people and talk about the stuff that just me and Mike or Spira. You can tell I hadn't done this in a minute. I never made other than when we in private, plugging in thing, man. Something that you have to, you gotta just dedicate yourself to showing up. A lot of it was showing up. I remember Spira, man, his thing would let everybody know how serious he was. He was showing up.
Right.
He would have a full day in school, man, and have classes and tests and recitals or whatever, but he would show up. He would show up, man. I'd be surprised for him to have as much schooling to go through, masters, PhD, to see as much as he showed up to things. You know, he didn't miss very much. He was like Johnny on the spot. So the plug-in is something that it's kind of like you make your own plug-in. You make it up. I mean, you have to, you could become the cat that's always knocking on somebody else's door, you know, because you know, like a pest. And that's what you really become, is like a pest to what you're trying to plug in.
And I'm showing some of the round table clip here.
Yeah, that was, those meetings were very important. Now that we look back, they were very important just to look at the folks, and everybody's still here. You know, everybody, you know, that in that frame is still here and claiming mucusless diet.
So my thing with the plugging in, to me, I think about it in the same way that you would maybe, because if I asked you the same question and it was about the music, you might respond even a little differently. But that's how I think about the plug-in with the mucusless diet healing system, is to go with what you have access to. So when you first got into it, that's separates a pioneer from generations of people that come later. The pioneer has to do some things differently than what some people that are going to have to do later. But as you want to plug into whatever is available at the time, like whatever the dynamic is. For me, it's a sacred thing. It's closest when people always want me to talk about spirituality and do spiritual videos and stuff, and I generally avoid that type of thing. But for me, the plug-in is sacred. Now that doesn't mean that you have to talk to somebody every day or call, that might be a part of it for a period of time. But the quality of plug-in, if your plug-in is on point and you're really plugged in, you can, you know, it doesn't have nothing to do with like, oh, you have to contact somebody a certain amount or this or that. It's like, nah, it's this vibration where you're connected into the source. There's like this source of the information, the vibration. When you get plugged in, you're getting so many benefits in terms of the inspiration, the motivation. So for me, it's something that you can be conscious of, because like what Brother Air was saying, are you showing up?